I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, the Ontario government will help fund the search for residential school burial sites.
But we don't know how many others are out there, or most importantly, where they are buried.
This is a moment to recognize the painful legacy of Canada's residential school system.
The Ford government is pledging millions of dollars to help in the search for possible remains here in Ontario. And
when I saw my face attached to, something like that, it felt like a bad dream.
CFL player Chris Larson is speaking out tonight after being identified on social media as being involved in an alleged attack on a gay man. Plus, with the City of Toronto's vaccine rollout reaching a milestone, we are looking into why some people over 80 still haven't received their jab. After last month's discovery of children's remains on the grounds of a former British Columbia residential school, Ontario is now providing millions of dollars to help in the search for burial sites here in our province. There were 18 residential schools in Ontario. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission identified burial sites at 12 of them. However, it's believed there are more. Lorena Redekop has the story.
A $10 million commitment to search Ontario's residential school grounds comes weeks after a search in Kamloops, BC, found evidence of remains of 215 children.
While we're prepared to work with the federal government, we simply cannot wait any longer to act. Support survivors, their families, and Indigenous communities.
The government announced this together with Indigenous leaders and says it will be working with the communities. It says work will begin immediately. The first phase will involve dealing with trauma and mental health supports after bringing up these painful memories.
And creating some call cultural genocide, but for us, it's genocide. That's what took place. They wanted to wipe us out.
A small volunteer-driven search for remains already happened 4 years ago on a piece of the grounds of the former Mohawk Institute, Canada's first and longest-running residential school.
To this very day, at Six Nations, there are whispers within our community about our missing children and where they might have been buried. It is past time that we find them and bring justice. We don't know how many children in total we're talking about, and again, it is essential that we find out.
Initial reaction from families affected was positive.
Although there are some issues that will come from it, like trauma, revisited trauma, it's still very good news that they're taking the initiative to do something like this.
10 million over 3 years is a drop in a bucket.
The NDP critic on Indigenous affairs says he's been consulting with experts and expects this work will take much longer than 3 years. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission said at least 12 former residential schools had unmarked grave sites, and at least 426 children died at the schools.
We're looking at probably a decade, 10 years, to do the work that needs to be done to look at the sites.
The province says it will assess the funding, and an option is also to ask the federal government for help. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
An outbreak of COVID-19 is hitting an isolated First Nation in Northern Ontario hard. There are more than 200 active cases in the community. Most are children, and they weren't vaccinated during the first rounds because injections had not been approved for young people. Ottawa is sending health workers and the military in to help. Olivia Stefanovich has more.
Much needed relief for a Cree community in the grip of a COVID-19 outbreak.
I believe a lot of people are scared just like me, afraid to lose our people.
About 1 in 10 people in this remote James Bay First Nation are sick with the virus. The vast majority kids, the youngest a 2-month-old baby.
It's an overcrowding issue. We started off with 1 and then 3, and all of a sudden jumps to 11. And it was climbing every day after that.
It's not unusual for up to 20 people to live under one roof in Saskatchewan. It's hard to stop the spread.
We're in a total lockdown. We're confined to our homes and in our yards only. We're in a community, people are in a state of panic and anxiety.
The Grand Chief of the region declared a state of emergency at the beginning of the pandemic, but says Ottawa didn't adequately follow up.
It's sad. I'm angry because now they're reacting to a situation in which we were getting ready. We were trying to get ready for.
He says there are no isolation units in the community, leaving people with no other choice but to create their own.
We're dealing, I think, with the worst case scenario.
The new Democrat MP of the area wants answers from the federal government.
And we need to investigate what it means to have COVID running in such high numbers in little children and in babies.
A team of Canadian Rangers is on the ground, and the government says it's deploying more healthcare workers, along with personal protective equipment and isolation units, measures community leaders say should have been in place earlier. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Despite the situation in Saskatchewan, COVID-19 numbers in the rest of the province continue to improve. There were 296 new cases reported today. That's the fewest on a single day since last September. The 7-day average of daily cases is down to 479. That's also the lowest it's been since September. Just over 17,000 tests were done in the province with a positivity rate of 2.3%. 13 more people died with the illness. The City of Toronto hitting a vaccine milestone today. 20% of residents 18 and older are now fully vaccinated. 75% have had at least one dose. The demand for a shot was on display at one pop-up clinic today near Warden and St. Clair.
I mean, it has good intentions. There's just a lot more demand than I think they realized.
Man, I've been here since 5:30. So at this point, about 3 hours and 5 minutes. Wow. Yeah. The thing is that I feel like it could have been a bit more organized. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues right now that could lead to quite a bit of frustration is that there's not really anyone out here kind of guiding the lines.
Having thousands of people in line is not an accident. This is poor planning. This is a policy decision.
At 10 after 6 this morning, I said it was so heartening to see so many people lining up already. And now we've, through various connections in social media and what have you, we found out that the first people were here at 1 o'clock in the morning, which was just miraculous to me.
2,000 doses were available at this location today, and they were all accounted for by 10 a.m. Those folks doing the right thing, lining up for that vaccine. At least the weather is cooperating with them today, Colette.
Is it ever? We have gorgeous conditions for this. And in fact, most of us have not traveled in a long time. So I thought I would take everyone around North America on a little bit of a tour, kind of in search of some of our weather as we're watching this system clear the province in terms of any rainfall well to the east. So that's what's happening in Atlantic Canada. They're inheriting this system. You can see all those lightning strikes associated with it and the clear skies for us. There's no active weather to the south of us, really, until we get down here towards the Gulf of Mexico, where we're watching this area right here for tropical development, but that's still a few days off. Then I can take you over towards the desert southwest. And speaking of desert, I mean, boy, they need the rain through here, and you can see the very dry conditions, just a few little pop-ups. In fact, they have multiple heat warnings and excessive heat warnings stretching from Montana down to Southern California and into Arizona. So now let's come back up to the Pacific Northwest towards BC, Alberta. Okay, there's some wet weather through this area. What is in between? Our weather for the next couple of days. Big, broad ridge of high pressure, dry conditions. Now, this is pulling cooler air in this stronger northwesterly breeze that's coming from the north at us. So temperatures a little bit cooler, 21 degrees right now. And those winds at times have been gusting. These are sustained up towards nearly 50 kilometers an hour. Tonight, our temperature is going to fall to 10 degrees. Tomorrow, 21. Winds will be a little bit gusty. But as we head into Thursday, we'll find those winds shifting direction. That will change our temperatures. I'll talk about that coming up, Dwight.
Thank you, Colette.
This weather update is brought to you by Train. For a limited time, take advantage of 36 equal payments and 0% financing. It's hard to stop a train.
Suspended defensive lineman for the Ottawa Red Blacks, Chris Larson, says he was not involved in an alleged hate-motivated attack. Social media posts had alleged Larson was involved in an incident that happened on Toronto Island on June 5th. Kella Yoon joins us live now in the newsroom with more on this. And Kella, you spoke to Larson today. What did he tell you?
Well, Dwight, Larson was advised by his lawyer, Calvin Barry, not to give details about his version of events since police are still investigating. But Barry did say other witnesses who were there that day have corroborated that Larson is innocent. Now, Larson said he's continuing to cooperate with police and hopes to just move on from all of this.
When I saw my face attached to, something like that, it felt like a bad dream.
Chris Larson said it felt like a gut punch when he saw the social media posts that pointed to him as one of the perpetrators of an attack on a member of the LGBTQ community. He said he gave his side of the story to police last Friday.
A lot of times it's better to let the police do the investigation before people jump to conclusions.
The victim, 24-year-old David Gomez, shared his story on social media. He said he was walking with his roommate around 11:30 that night. They were walking to the ferry to head back to the mainland when a man on a bicycle started trailing him. When they got to the ferry dock, he says several other individuals circled them and started hurling homophobic slurs. That's when Toronto police say a woman grabbed the victim and the suspects punched and kicked him. Gomez says he was taken to hospital with a broken nose, smashed-in teeth, multiple lacerations, and a concussion. Larson was identified on social media as one of the people responsible for the attack. The Ottawa Red Blacks suspended him while police investigated. Now, Larson says he was in the area that day celebrating a friend's birthday, but was not involved in any way in the attack.
If you know me personally, you know that, anything that was being said about me is not true. It's not my character. It's not the way I was raised. I denounce any sort of hate crime.
This is an example of somebody that was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Toronto police have not told us whether they're investigating Larson, and the Red Blacks have not reinstated him. Police tell us that no arrests have been made, and they are still searching for 3 suspects, 2 men and a woman believed to be involved in this attack. They are also keen to speak to 2 possible witnesses. Dwight.
Thank you, Kelda. Today marked day 2 of the trial for Linda O'Leary, the wife of celebrity businessman Kevin O'Leary. In August 2019, O'Leary drove her boat into another vessel on Lake Joseph in Cottage Country. 2 people on the other boat were killed and 3 others were injured. Now, today, court heard from Richard Raw, a witness who was also charged in the crash. Court heard that Raw had taken over operating a boat that belonged to his friend Irv Edwards, the owner of the boat that O'Leary hit. Raw also told court that the boat he was aboard had its navigation lights on at the time of the crash, a detail that has been a point of contention in the case. O'Leary has pleaded not guilty to a charge of careless operation of a vessel. The trial is taking place in person in Parry Sound and is being broadcast by video conference. It's set to continue for the rest of the week and pick up again in mid-July. Residents in the South Down Road and Lakeshore West area were asked to keep their windows and doors closed this morning after a fire at a Petro-Canada refinery. Mississauga Fire says it happened just after 5 a.m. The 2-alarm blaze generated a lot of smoke and flames, and there were concerns for air quality. The fire was put out just before 9 a.m., and officials say there are no more concerns. The cause is under investigation. Heads up, drivers, the Gardiner Expressway is set to close for entire weekend later this month, starting next Friday, June 25th, and at 11 p.m., the expressway will close completely from 427 to the DVP. It will stay closed until Monday, June 28th at 5 a.m. The province says most people who are in the ICU with COVID-19 either aren't vaccinated or have only had 1 dose. They're also disproportionately seniors. Jessica Ng is looking into why some of them remain vulnerable to the virus.
Shanta Suntaraisen is helping a senior get to their 2nd dose appointment. Her volunteer organization, Pink Cars, has helped 5,000 people book and get to vaccine appointments in York Region.
Many seniors have been prevented from getting the 1st or even the 2nd vaccination because they have many family members that don't believe in it, that are preventing them and putting pressure on them not to get vaccinated.
And the province says that's a growing concern.
Most individuals going into the hospital, especially ICU, and not doing well are unvaccinated. It really is disappointing when people have chosen not to and take that risk.
Toronto Public Health reporting a difference of 6% between vaccination rates for 60 to 79-year-olds and those 80 and above. In Peel Region, a similar story, but closer to a 10% difference. So what else could be causing this dip in vaccine uptake for those over 80?
People hear things about side effects. I had one person say to me she didn't want to get the vaccine because she lived alone. And if she had side effects, there was no one there who was going to be able to take care of her.
Seniors like Elaine Tordai say that's true.
I have a couple of friends who were really concerned and hung and waited to make sure.
Elaine says even with the help of her son and being tech savvy herself, navigating the booking system was a challenge, one that many of her friends also experienced, especially when it came to their second doses.
They were saying there were appointments, but I'd get on at early morning, midday, late at night, nothing. I went on for a few days, and that's when, as I said, that's when I started getting very stressed out, thinking I'll never be able to get one.
Shanta says Pink Cars now has partners across Canada, helping people like Elaine.
It's freedom. The biggest thing for me is that I can see my family. We can be together, we can see each other, and then I can feel safe.
It's one of Canada's most popular sports, but over the past few years, registration for minor hockey in Ontario hasn't reflected that.
In the past, it was an automatic for people to sign their kids up to play hockey. It just isn't that way anymore, and we can't take it for granted.
I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, a new campaign by the Ontario Minor Hockey Association hopes to boost registration numbers by sharing the benefits of hockey and the community around it.
Breaking news for you now. Police say 2 people were arrested after allegedly trying to enter a mosque in Scarborough and threatening building staff. Police say they received a call around 11:50 a.m. from the Islamic Institute of Toronto, located near Morningside and Finch. A man and a woman allegedly tried to enter the building and make threats to staff, notably a custodian on site. Officers arrived and arrested 2 people. Police say the couple was believed to be on illicit drugs. No weapons or explosives were recovered. While police say the incident is not believed to be hate-motivated, Toronto Police Hate Crime Unit has been notified and will be supporting the ongoing investigation. The political future of Green Party leader Annamie Paul may become uncertain soon. The party's federal council could vote tonight to jumpstart the process that could remove her from leadership. According to party members with knowledge of the issue, the party's governing body will hold a vote on whether to trigger a complex 30-day process. If the council votes tonight to launch that process, it will meet again on July 15th to decide on her leadership. It follows last week's huge setback when former Green Party MP Jenica Atwin crossed the floor to join the Liberals. The move left the Green Party now with just 2 MPs in the House of Commons. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has wrapped up his trip to Europe. He met with top officials from the European Union and toured the Pfizer pharmaceutical plant that is producing the COVID-19 vaccine. Evan Dwyer now with the latest.
Well, there's a very ordinary looking building here behind me, but this factory right now is one of the most important in the world. And from the point of view of Canada's vaccination drive, it is the most important. This is the Pfizer plant in Purs, Belgium, where the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine is made, and it has been made since about the middle of last year. Before it even has received approval, Pfizer was already working on producing this vaccine in the millions of doses a day. This is where most of the vaccine that comes from Europe to Canada is produced, and Europe is responsible for about half of the doses that come into Canada. I spoke with Luc van Steenwinkel, who is the general manager of this plant, about the feeling that the people have coming to work in this plant every day, knowing how important what they're doing is to the whole world right now.
Well, there is an enormous pride with the people that they are able to contribute to this higher mission, actually, to end the pandemic as soon as possible. Everyone is hurt by the pandemic. Everybody has seen family members suffering from it. So it really gives a great feeling and also a great level of energy that they are able to contribute to ending this pandemic as soon as possible. And that's what we all strive for.
The Prime Minister was here and met with the Prime Minister of Belgium as well as the King of the Belgians. Earlier today he had an important meeting also with the 2 leading figures of the European Union, Charles Michel and Ursula von der Leyen. And they talked about a number of issues: Canada's free trade agreement. They talked about a new military mobility arrangement that will allow Canadian troops to move freely around Europe, cross borders, as if they were an EU military. They also talked about another issue that's been very interesting and important this week, which is China. We've seen a harsh tone towards China, first at the G7 summit, then at NATO, and now again at the European Union summit with Canada, where we saw Ursula von der Leyen express some of the skepticism that European officials are feeling about the origins of COVID and the investigation that's been carried out so far. Let's watch.
It would be good if we worked together, and we agreed on that, to reform WHO, because in particular we have to improve the early warning system, and we have to improve the investigative powers of WHO, because we all know that we lost precious months at the beginning of the pandemic.
So a continuation of what we saw, where we saw at the G7 China isolated diplomatically with countries lining up against it, then militarily at NATO, and now also we're seeing a drive to isolate China economically. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Purs, Belgium.
A high-stakes meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to take place tomorrow in Geneva. It's the first since Biden took office, and it comes on the heels of G7 and NATO meetings and amid heightened tensions over several key issues between the two countries. Susan Ormiston reports.
One of the two presidents for this highly anticipated summit has now arrived in Geneva. Joe Biden coming here this afternoon direct from NATO talks in Brussels. It's not expected that President Putin will arrive, perhaps in Geneva, till tomorrow morning. President Biden sat down with the Swiss president this afternoon, underscoring what he's been saying all week, that the U.S. is back on the international stage, and its commitment to NATO is strong, unshakable, even sacred, he said. All week, Biden's been surrounded by world leaders, charmed by some of them, anxious from some European leaders to have the U.S. re-engage, and tomorrow's meeting will be diametrically different. Biden and Putin will meet in this 18th century Swiss villa inside a park here. It's a beautiful setting, but now, of course, surrounded by security wire and protected by Swiss soldiers. A perimeter will go into lockdown Wednesday here, stretching from the lake all the way up through the park. But other than the images, unusual images of the Russian and U.S. flag next to each other on a roadway coming up here, there's not a lot of sense in this city that the summit is going on. That will change tomorrow with streets locked down all around here. We're hearing that the talks may go on for 4 to 5 hours. There may be as many as 5 delegates on each side at certain times of the afternoon, and then there will be separate news conferences. Biden and Putin come to these talks approaching them with a very narrow band of possible agreement, maybe on arms talks, about controlling climate change, about the pandemic. But Biden comes with a list of grievances, including Russian aggression in Ukraine, ransomware, and cyber hacking, also on human rights and Russia's treatment of opposition leaders inside the country. But President Putin has signaled repeatedly in the last few weeks that he will not tolerate a lecture from the U.S. on domestic politics and still refutes interference in U.S. elections. It's obvious to say there remains a wide gulf between these two leaders, which will not be bridged on Wednesday. Unlike Donald Trump, President Biden will not meet with Vladimir Putin alone, as Trump did back in Helsinki in 2018. It is clear that these two leaders think this summit is worth the risk if there's any prospect of thawing relations between Russia and the United States, which have sunk dangerously low. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Geneva.
When we come back, a 24-year-old woman from Whitby just did something only one other Canadian has ever done.
The moment that I stepped on the mats, I just loved being there.
Jessica's journey to a senior world judo championship coming up. Students in Durham are asking the school boards to reconsider changing school hours for the upcoming 2021-22 school year starting in September. Classes for Durham District School Board will begin at 10 in the morning and end at 4 in the afternoon. Grade 11 student Madison Cook started a petition against the time change. Cook and her fellow students say moving classes later in the day interferes with part-time work hours, makes extracurriculars unmanageable, and financially impacts students and families who rely on siblings for after-school care.
10 to 4, like that's, right in the middle of the day.
it's inconvenient for students, teachers, parents. Like it doesn't work with anyone.
More than 2,500 people have signed the petition. In a statement to CBC, the Durham District School Board says the change is due to a shortage of school bus drivers made worse by the pandemic, adding the temporary measure was the only way that Durham Student Transportation Services could ensure all eligible students can receive transportation services. A new campaign is trying to encourage more young people to sign up for hockey. The Ontario Minor Hockey Association is pointing to the mental health impacts of the pandemic and the benefits of sport. As Talia Ricci reports, advocates say the campaign is a chance to break down barriers faced by young people trying to get involved in the game.
I was bored out of my mind.
That's how Marcus Wong felt when hockey was put on pause during the pandemic. He and his brother have been playing since they were around 4 years old. They say their teammates and coaches have become more like a family.
I enjoy being around with my friends a lot, like on the ice and off the ice.
That's something their dad feels too.
Hockey is given to my family so much. I'm a huge hockey fan. I really wanted it to be a way for us to connect for my family.
The Ontario Minor Hockey Association wants other families to have this experience. It represents 225 local minor hockey associations across the province. And overall, registration for the sport over the last 5 years has been stagnant, and it's anticipated the pandemic will add to that challenge.
Perhaps whereas in the past it was an automatic for people to sign their kids up to play hockey, it just isn't that way anymore, and we can't take it for granted.
The OMHA launched a campaign to try to boost their registration. It focuses on the mental health benefits of sports. They say there are programs to help youth enter the game who may not have the financial means, and also opportunities to try out the sport before committing.
Hockey is a game for everyone, and that's something we want to continue to communicate.
I'm interested to see, what kind of barriers are they going to remove through the programs that they're offering.
Moisin Hasham is the founder of Hockey for Youth, which helps new Canadians play hockey at no cost. He says this campaign is an opportunity to reach more diverse communities, something he knows takes time and care.
There could be culture barriers, there could be gender barriers, there could be transportation and accessibility barriers. In hockey in particular, in Canada, I would say there are many challenges that go beyond actually running an outreach campaign. You really need to get people involved and engaged in the sport.
Marcus and Matthew are already looking forward to hopefully being back on the ice multiple nights a week this fall.
Being with my friends and also learning new skills.
Registration is now open. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Today, the government announced an investment of more than $1 million for the Tam Heather Curling Club in Scarborough. Mayor Tory says research shows people are interested in curling.
Among people who are children and youth, members of the 2S LGBTQ communities, and those with physical and intellectual and developmental challenges. They're all groups of people who have a keen interest in curling.
$900,000 will come from the province and $700,000 from the city. The mayor said the funding will go towards repairing the building and making it accessible. He adds this investment will help people in the community stay active and create more space for expanding programming. Whitby has its very own judo champion. Last week, 24-year-old Jessica Klimkate won a world championship while at the same time earning a spot on Canada's Olympic team. She's now back home, but instead of training, she's isolating as part of COVID-19 protocols. Greg Ross spoke with her about her big win.
That was 1 week ago. Jessica Klimkate won the 57-kilogram weight class at the Senior World Judo Championship in Budapest, Hungary. Today, the Whitby native is in Montreal, where she would normally be training, but instead she's quarantining.
Because I've done this 2 or 3 times now, I'm just like I've ran out of things to watch.
Rather than watching Netflix, she'd prefer to be training because the biggest competition of her life is a little over a month away. With her win in Budapest, Klimkate qualified for her first Olympics.
I'm just sort of trying to stay active and trying to keep my body mobile, so when I do return to the mats, then I'm at least in a good physical condition to be able to push.
She's been training for this moment nearly her whole life. Klimkate was only 4 years old when she started taking judo lessons at the Ajax Budokan Judo Club.
I took to it ever since. I the moment that I stepped on the mats, I just loved being there.
And now, in a span of just 7 weeks, the 24-year-old has a chance to accomplish her 2 biggest goals. The first winning at the Worlds, the next challenge comes in Tokyo.
Obviously, the pinnacle is the Olympics, and that's what everyone looks to every 4 years. So for the last 2 or 3 years, I knew exactly what I was training for.
With her win in Budapest, Klimkate goes into the Summer Games as the top-ranked competitor at 57 kilos, and the woman all of her competition want to beat.
They just saw me have a really good competition, and I'm, in really good shape and in doing good things on the mats.
Are you saying that puts a little bit of a target on your back, winning the World Championships right before the Olympics?
Yeah, absolutely.
Klimkate returns to her regular training next week and will leave for Tokyo on July 18th. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Enjoying meeting all these Olympians as we run up to these games, Colette.
Yeah, she's very impressive, and obviously we wish her well. Well, boy, we're having some good weather, aren't we? Yeah, and what a change when it's not just that the temperatures are a little cooler, but how dry the air feels as well. Kind of explain that here in just a moment. We do have the cool breeze out of the northwest. That's with us for a few days here. Then it's going to change directions, and once it does, the temperature's going to be rising a little bit. If you're looking for some rain showers, you don't like the dryness or the dry feel, well, those coming in as we head towards Friday. These are the daytime highs. Not very impressive, are they? They're very comfortable is what they are. Sarnia just in the high teens there at 19 and seeing Toronto at 22 degrees. And now we've only dropped 1 degree, so we're still holding at 21. We've got some teens into southwestern Ontario up into cottage country. But this is what I want to show you too, is kind of that moisture content of the air, our dew points. These are exceptionally low in terms of what we are seeing, and that's why this air just has this feel to it kind of thing. It's also going to allow our temperature tonight to fall off a little bit. Not that we're going to get to single digits, but there are going to be parts of Ontario that will, and I mean southern Ontario, that will get to single digits. We're just barely going to hold there. So we don't have active weather to speak of. Anything that was here leaving the province, exiting to the east. I was showing everyone that earlier. If you were with us, high pressure in play, and because it's so dominant, such a big ridge, this is our weather for a few days. So we had the nice conditions today, again into tomorrow for Wednesday, Thursday, but it begins to heat up. And then we'll see that next system coming in. Now, getting back to these winds. So the northwesterly flow, gusty today at times, those gusts around 50 kilometers an hour, definitely giving a cooler feel. If we look ahead at the forecast with these, we're still going to be seeing them into tomorrow. At times, they are still going to be a little bit gusty, not quite as much as today. And then look more at the arrows here as I roll this forward and get us into Thursday for the Golden Horseshoe. You see that shift to the southwest. So instead of pulling down that cooler, drier air from the north, we're going to see our temperatures go up a little bit. Kind of this time of year, 24 degrees would be a seasonal high. We'll be kind of around that. Mid-20s is what I've got for you. So tonight, temperatures look like this. Markham, there's one of those single digits right there. Looking at Oshawa, 10 degrees. Same thing through Toronto, and you may hold just a little bit milder than that. With into southwestern Ontario, could be a little bit of fog there. We should be doing okay. But do know when we have sunshine like this, that UV index, it's at 8, or very high, 21 degrees, really nice conditions. Thursday, there's that warm up towards the mid-20s, so just a little above seasonal. And then the showers that are moving in into Friday. I know we've got Father's Day and the first day of summer coming up, the end of the weekend. And right now, the forecast is looking good for you, Dwight.
Us dads appreciate the reminder. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
A university town in Nova Scotia is joining the race to become the first in Canada to reach net zero carbon emissions. More than 80% of the energy used in Antigonish already comes from renewable sources. CBC's Kayla Hounslow went there to find out how they're doing it and how they hope to inspire others.
So this is the heat pump that we had installed.
Martin McLaren jumped at the chance when his town offered to help set up a greener source of heat.
Our house was heated with the electric heat and it wasn't very efficient.
It's just one of the ways the town of Antigonish is trying to go green, 100%.
It's attainable and we know it's attainable.
The mayor says right now 84% of Antigonish's energy is renewable. She admits her town has a head start because it has its own electric utility. It also owns a wind farm, which generates 40% of its power.
That's 40% we didn't have to buy off of another company. So that enables us to make sure that we're going green.
The town is also planning to install electric vehicle chargers and solar gardens. The mayor says all of it will not only help this community achieve emissions goals, but the entire province and the country.
One person can make a difference, one block can make a difference, one town can make a difference. We're not a very big town, but this is transformational.
The next move is targeting the biggest emissions producer here, St. Francis Xavier University.
We double the size of the Antigonish area when our students are back in town.
The university has already installed solar panels and geothermal heating in new buildings. The problem is its central heating plant.
We use a very dirty fuel source. It's run by bunker C oil, 2,500 vehicles off the street if we could get rid of it.
The plan is to build a new plant powered by the wind farm and hydroelectricity. Most of the plans help the pocketbook too. McLaren says his heat pump saved him $500 in the first 4 months.
I think it's a great thing, for this small town that we are to try to be leaders within our country.
There are other Canadian communities with similar goals. Antigonish is happy to be in the race and welcomes healthy competition for the greater good. Kayla Hounsel, CBC News, Antigonish, Nova Scotia.
We are aiming to reframe our view of Canada.
After repeated postponements due to the pandemic, organizers announced today that Luminato is finally going to take place, even if it will still be mostly online. Slated to run from October 13th to the 17th. Yelena Adzik joins us now with a sneak peek. So share some of the highlights in the works for this year, Yelena.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just relieved they're finally going ahead, Dwight. So let me give you a little bit of a sense of a look. They put out this sizzle reel, so I'll share it with you there. When I talk about one of them, for example, it's called New Monuments. And this teams up internationally recognized IBPOC Toronto talent working alongside homegrown talent in a really kind of cool, collaborative live performance where you have dance meets film, and it's a blend of different dance styles. So ballet, street style, contemporary, and it's going to take place on the shores of Lake Ontario, where there'll be over 40 dancers across Toronto. Now, what's interesting about what they're going to attempt to do is talk about new monuments. The central question is, do statues that adorn our public spaces really speak to the values that represent us as a city? Do they elevate us? And should they be dismantled piece by piece? Statues are a big part of the question there. So that was conceived and curated by Toronto's iconic Director X, aka Julian Christian Lutz, and so he put this all together alongside lead choreographer Tanisha Scott. She has worked with Beyonce and Sean Paul, so you know it's going to be good, Dwight. That's just one example. Another one to show you, Edward Bertinsky, the internationally recognized photographer, has a huge project called In the Wake of Progress. Now, Bertinsky is known for these massive shots, these photography images of land, destruction of various land sites. So whether it's plastic bottles or landmines, junk, garbage, fishing, all kinds of things that really lead to environmental degradation, but ironically, he shows them in a hauntingly beautiful way. Well, he's going to be putting together a huge retrospective of his work, and I want you to picture all of those giant screens at Yonge and Dundas Square by the Eaton Centre, Dwight, and those are all going to be filled with his imagery. I'm going to give you a listen to Edward Bertinsky right now.
I'm playing these series, everything from quarries to mines to the auto industry to rail cuts going through the Rockies to agriculture and consumer waste and China and all the making of consumer goods. So I wanted to take all of that and string it into a 20-minute piece where all the screens are being activated, including video and stills. I think all in all, it's I'm very excited to bring it forward and bring it into the public square.
Okay, so that's something to look forward to in October. I'm going to do one of these, Dwight, and put my fingers crossed because they really want this to happen in real life. A lot of the Luminato events are online, but they want people to experience this firsthand at Yonge Dundas Square. So hopefully, with socially distanced rules in place, it should be all right to do so by October.
I love how Bertinsky uses his art to inform, so I would love to see that one 100%. I know you also got a chance to speak with the artistic director of Luminato. What did she have to say?
I did. So her name is Naomi Campbell, and she is the artistic director, as you say. And I asked her a question, and I asked the CEO of Luminato a question, and it was simply, listen, you guys have the inside track. You know what you programmed. What is something that really comes to mind that would lighten our hearts, lift our spirits, and elevate us a little bit? And here's what they chose. I'm going to start, first of all, with, as you say, the artistic director. And specifically, she is talking about a project that's called Guided by Starlight. And I just have to tell you a tiny bit about it. It's music that's happening, dancers. It's a 5-part series in Scarborough, Etobicoke, and various neighborhoods around Toronto where you're going to be seeing dancers, hopefully, again, in real life. And then we're going to hear from the CEO talking about a special exhibit she's looking forward to. Have a listen.
I think there's nothing like the idea of being able to, dance, whether we're together or in our living rooms, we'll still dance together to that amazing music. So that's one of the programs that I'm sure will inspire joy in people.
The one that we're hoping to do in person is a beautiful drive-in experience with Misha Brugger-Guzman and her spectacular band. Misha's Gospel Brunch, and doing it at a big parking lot near you or in the middle of you, and actually being live.
That's the hope for October 17th. That's called Misha's Gospel Brunch. That's at Fairview Mall parking lot. The biggest thing to remember about Luminato is that all of the events are free. So they take place October 13th to 17th, and you can find out more at luminatofestival.com.
Thanks, Yelena.
You got it, Dwight.
You know the saying, one person's trash is another person's treasure? Well, that's especially true for the person who found this. They bought the painting from the donation center at a dump near North Bay for $5. It turns out the artist is none other than the late British music icon David Bowie. Experts believe it's from a series of portraits he did back in the 1990s. The piece is part of an online auction opening today and is expected to fetch close to $12,000. That's a nice price. North York's Emery Village BIA is hosting a free event later this month at the Italian Contemporary Film Festival in honor of COVID-19 heroes. And today it gave away passes to workers at Humber River Hospital for a night of cinema under the stars.
It's a beautiful sentiment to acknowledge our hard work, and it's a community effort. So we really do appreciate the community members, Emery and BIA, for honoring everyone at this challenging time. And this too shall pass, and we are in this together through and through. So thank you very much on behalf of our team.
Registration for the drive-in movie night opened this afternoon with more than 150 car passes available for essential workers and their families. The event is set to take place on June 30th at Ontario Place and includes admission for 4 people per car, as well as snacks and pizza. Organizers say it's important to give back to those who have been carrying the burden of the pandemic. And they are so right, Colin, and hopefully they'll get a clear, starry night for the event.
Yes, absolutely. Looking for that. We've certainly got this clear, starry night for you tonight. We are seeing, in fact, the next couple of days with very little to talk about in terms of active weather. All right, we had some winds today, right? A little gusty from the northwest. We'll be having those into tomorrow as well before they change direction. But this broad area goes well beyond the Great Lakes. Yes, this is where we have that high pressure in place. So it's our weather for a few days because there's nothing here to the west that's going to be moving in. Our next best chance to get into some showery activity is going to be into Friday. Overnight tonight, I was showing earlier how our dew points are quite low. We're talking about the temperature falling off. A few spots will be into the high single digits. For Toronto, 10 degrees. And then looking at tomorrow afternoon, there's that northwesterly flow, not quite as gusty as today. A high, very high, in fact, UV index. So watch out for that and be prepared in terms of sunscreen and having sunglasses as well. But 21 degrees. Then with the southwesterly flow that we are going to get into as we go towards Thursday, that's where we're going to see that temperature back up, I should say, a little bit. Humidity climbing too. Certainly it will be there with the rain on Friday, 24, and into the weekend, including Father's Day on Sunday, the first day of summer. At this point, things are looking really good, Dwight.
That's a really good call at 25 and sunny. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everybody, and stay safe and enjoy the hockey tonight.